Hi everyone, welcome to MIAC's Artist and Scholar Dialogue series, where MIAC staff and curators are speaking with different artists and scholars about their work, the impact the pandemic has had on their practice, and just what they've been up to in the past several months. My name's Lilia McEnany, and I am a curatorial assistant at the museum. And today we'll be talking with Jhane Myers, a Comanche and Blackfeet artist and film producer. Jhane's work is massive in scope and range. She does everything from organizing public programs to modeling to making dance regalia, jewelry, and dolls to working in several aspects of the film industry. But before we start talking with Jhane, I'd like to briefly acknowledge the place where this conversation is happening, even though we're in the digital realm, at least on my end, in Ogopoge within the Tewa world. And I wish to acknowledge all of the Native people, past, present, and future, who walk on these lands. As a non-Native person living in so-called Santa Fe, I'm a guest in the ancestral homelands of the Tewa people. So now we can get started. Hi, Jhane. Thank you for joining us. So for those of the viewers who don't know you, why don't we just start with a quick introduction of who you are, a bit about your work. I know you have a million things going on, so can you just give us a little introduction to what you've been up to?
I always have a million things going on, but now with COVID, it's like kind of 500,000. So it's not so much as it usually is. But I live here in Santa Fe. I've been here for maybe 12 years. Originally from Oklahoma. I'm Comanche. I'm on the Comanche roll, but I'm also enough Blackfeet. I'm a quarter Blackfeet to be on the Blackfeet roll. But I was raised by my grandparents in Oklahoma.
Great. So can you talk a little bit about how the pandemic has changed your professional life and artistic practice? I mean, I know it's changed everything in everybody's lives, but can we talk a little bit about what specifically has changed for you?
I think for me, it's been an adjustment for myself and my children. As a Native person, uh, it's really like given me the time to work on my traditional art, to work on the things that I do sell, jewelry, etc. Because normally I don't have that time because I spend a lot of time traveling for the film work that I do. But it's been kind of a nice break. Like if you could wish that you had this long extended vacation, and what could you do? So I made a whole list of all this stuff that needs to be done, and I've just been ticking through it. I can now park my car in my garage, which I couldn't do before. So Black Velveteen is parked inside for the winter. And then it's been amazing for me to be able to be in my home. I worked on my outdoors, and we did a lot of cooking out and eating outside because we're not able to. Nobody wants to stay inside all the time, so it's been great. My daughter Pishan graduated from the San Francisco University of Art this summer, but her last semester she was home for Christmas, and then she never went back because they went to online school. So her last semester of school was spent here, which was great because she's been away for 4 years. And for me, that was great. We actually got to see each other because I really missed her. And her graduation, it was just all up in the air. They decided not to have a graduation. They were going to have a virtual graduation. Now they're trying to decide again. She can graduate with this next coming class because they have a whole year to decide what they're having. So she got a cap and gown in the mail, which was real exciting for her. And my son is home because he's a model in New York, and we know New York was ground zero. So actually I was working on a film in Arizona in March, and he called me and he said, "Mom, how long do I have to stay up here? It's getting really bad." And I said, "Son, I've never lived through anything like this. When we're older, we'll be talking about in 2020, the year that didn't happen, we'll be talking about this." But, I didn't know. So I flew him home really quick. And he actually got home before I did because I was working now it's the hot spot of the Navajo Nation, which is like by Hopi in the northern, like the northwestern part of the reservation. But I was working on a film there, and I could you could tell it was going to be a hot spot later, but I was working on something else. Yeah. So all of my friends really tried to keep up with them and everything.
Yeah, that's definitely a very important part of all of this. So I also know that the switch with all the art markets and the museum being closed when you do a lot of work with MIAC and the film industry is on pause. How has that been for
Everything,
you?
it's like my whole life was put on pause, because every avenue that I have that would bring income to me was stopped. The film industry was stopped. MIAC was closed. What else? Sometimes I can go because I'm a powwow dancer, so I can go to powwows and compete. And I was also scheduled this year in March to be the storyteller at Denver March Powwow, and they bring school groups in and everything. So I was one of two storytellers. So that was canceled. Gathering of Nations was canceled, and then so all in my art shows. My last art show I did was the Heard Museum show,
Mhm.
and that's just everything was just stopped. I've had a
Yeah,
couple of flash sales with inventory, but every income level was just done.
right. And I remember at the herd, everybody was like kind of whispering about it, but nobody really, it was like just about to hit, remember? And
Hmm.
yeah, and then everything with Spaya too has been a huge change for everybody in the
Right.
community. Um, yeah, so um, yeah, so how have you like been navigating that? Have you been trying to sell your work online or how have you been
Mm,
trying to improvise?
not too much, because
Yeah.
I don't make a lot of inventory. My work is carried at MIAC in the museum shop, but of
Mhm.
course that's closed.
Right.
But it would be really hard for me to take orders and do a lot of stuff, because in my mind I'm thinking, oh, this is going to open up soon. I was lucky because I was able to be the executive producer on an opera, and the opera did very well. And but we even the opera had a 4-week run, and we were only able to run 2 weeks, and then LA closed down, so it closed down the opera, which
Mhm.
was going gangbusters. So that was kind of sad. But I had, since that job was a job that was unexpected, I just kind of saved that money and put it aside. And then I worked on a film down in New Zealand, or actually a TV show in New Zealand at the end of January, first part of February. So it was kind of like I've just been kind of, rationing myself out, stuff, and then
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what we're all doing, just trying to piece
yes,
stuff together. So can we
definitely,
talk a little bit more about Sweetland? So this is an
sure,
opera that was organized with the industry in LA, and you were an executive producer. So can
yes.
you just kind of introduce everybody to the premise of it and tell us why it's such a huge moment for opera?
It's a huge moment for me as an artist, because I've always loved opera. From early on. My first husband I shouldn't say was, is Italian, and I have a half Italian daughter. So she and I, when I was getting her used to language and Italian language, I took her to operas, because most librettos are in opera, so that way she could hear the language, and it's kind of a singing language. So I, as a person, fell in love with opera early on. And then this year, well, actually, I was a Sundance producer fellow several years ago. And at one of our summits, I sat next to a non-native gentleman, because at Sundance, there were only like 2 or 3 natives that were there at that event. And it was at the resort. He was at our table, and he's talking to me. He goes, "Oh, you're Native American?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh, I've always wanted to do an opera about the first Thanksgiving." And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, hell no." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because," I said, "for Indian people, that's the only thing that it seems like we're remembered for is Thanksgiving." And I said, "Don't do that." And he just kind of looked at me and he laughed, because I was so, I just told him what I thought. And I thought, who is this guy? I'll probably never see him again. He was our speaker during dinner. He was our keynote speaker. And then I realized his name's Yuval Sharon. He's a genius. He's brilliant. If you look him up, Yuval Sharon, Sharon. He's gotten the MacArthur Genius
Wow.
Award.
Mhm.
He's a younger guy, but what he does is he makes operas about truth. He makes operas that have the real performers that are native, or that comes from a native place, whether it's indigenous, whether it's Hispanic, whether it's African American. he's kind of changing the face of opera, because he's making it more about truth, no longer, okay, so we all love Madame Butterfly, right? But do they ever have, an Asian person playing Madame Butterfly? No. I mean, think about everything. Like
Right.
in opera, it's a show, and it's different people playing, these characters. So after that, he and I kept in touch, because I was embarrassed. So I was very nice to him when he came back. And I was, I'm so sorry I said that to you. And so we kept in touch via email. And then he had met Chanupa, Hanska Luger, and he wanted to develop this opera. And he said, Chanupa, come out to LA and visit me, and let's talk about an opera that I want to develop. Well, once he talked to Chanupa, and Chanupa's so articulate, and he's so strong in his conviction about having Native people correctly portrayed, he was like, well, I want to do this opera about Thanksgiving. And he's like, no. And he probably said more explicit words than I did. But it was kind of funny, because every Native person that Yuval came in to touch with had the same reaction that I did, and so Chanupa was originally going to do all the costuming, but once Yuval met Chanupa, he was so blown over, and he goes, I, as a Anglo Jewish man, cannot direct this opera. You have to come and help me. I need you as co-director. So Chanupa became the co-director, and he said, well, Chanupa said, well, you should talk to Raven Chacon, because Raven, who is half Navajo, half Hispanic, he came on as one of the composers. So he talked to him, and then they're like, we need to bring somebody else on. We need someone in the producing thing. And I had just produced on I was a location producer for Raven's music video that he did just like the year ahead. And we got permission from Gerald Peters to use this land. Like, if you ever go eat at Gabriel's, that beautiful land that's behind there with all the vista and everything, that's owned by Gerald Peters. So we got permission to shoot on that land. And so Chanupa's like, I don't know how Jhane pulled this off, but you should probably get her. And so then Yuval came out with his director of the industry, Elizabeth. So they came out from LA, and they were coming to see the opera here because the opera wanted to talk to him. But he came up to Mayak and said, can we take you to lunch? We want to talk to you. And that's when he offered me the job to come on as executive producer.
Yeah, and so how has that experience been for you? Have you produced an opera before, or was this
Never?
Yeah,
Never.
Yeah. So tell me about it.
Over the years, I feel like I've been building my resume in film. So I can say that with Raven, I've produced on a music video. I produced a documentary in Scott Momaday, Words from a Bear, which was for American Masters, which was a feat in itself. This is the first time that I guess we were 90% Native American crew produced something for American Masters. So it broke that glass ceiling. So everything I try to do is something that Native people we haven't done before, in the new genre. So I've worked on short films. I'm producing Pishon's Mistress Red, A Day in the Life of Mistress Red, which is a Sundance short. But I'm on a couple of other shorts that got the Senator John Pinto Award this year, the Memorial Fund. So that's for Native filmmakers. So I'm producing on 2 other shorts from that. So my I guess, and then I've worked in television, and so I felt like I've kind of I was kind of rounded, and I never thought I would be able to actually produce on an opera. I mean, it was a joy for me to be able to do that. I feel, in fact, like I haven't done enough. It's like, I'm like, well, what else could I do? Or what do you need? Because you have these people that are brilliant, and they have such talent. Raven is amazing.
He's incredible.
He's incredible. Chanupa, super incredible. Yuval,
a rock star.
Yes, they're all rock stars. And then you have like Jane Myers, like going, oh, what else?
Also a rock star. Also not a rock star.
Thank you, but I don't think so. But I felt like I should have done more. But it was great because everything was culturally correct. Everything was beautiful. The set design was beautiful. Everything was it's something that hasn't been seen. We had amazing reviews. We had 2 reviews by the New York Times. We had 3 by the LA Times. And like even the last one for the LA Times says, it says the little opera that just wouldn't quit, because everybody has been able to, I mean, it just made such a splash because it's new. I mean, if you think how old opera is, all right, think about opera, way back in, God, what is it? 16th century, 15th, 16th century, maybe 7. I mean, way back.
Way back.
So what new comes out of opera? Not much. But now, like, this is something totally new. So even though we only made it halfway through our run, we got funding from Vision Maker Media to make a film. So what we did is towards the end, we filmed it, and that's where probably I'll come in, because I mean, this is amazing. So we got funding, so we're going to make a film of the opera, because imagine if we did Native community engagement and we took this to the reservations. These are children that who knows if they would ever see an opera in their life. I didn't see an opera until I went away to college. So, I grew up in a Native area. I never saw opera, and I mean a real opera, until I went away, and I was in Dallas, and I saw my first one at the Morton Meyerson Symphony Center. I saw an opera there, and I was just like blown away. So imagine if you're a Native child on the res, and somebody brings this film up, and you get to see an opera that real Native people worked on. So it also opens that up. Ooh, I could be a filmmaker, because look, this filmmaker made a film about the opera. Or I could be a composer, or I could be a director, or I could be a costume designer. But just to know that, like, the first opera that you see is one that's about Native people, and it's about the arrival of the pilgrims, but they just call them the arrivals. They don't really say the pilgrims or the settlers or colonizers. Chinoopa was really good about developing that whole sense, and referring to people in different ways, because it's always the colonizers that are up top, and then the natives are down here. So that he flipped the switch, so then you have the natives up here, and then you have these colonizers as arrivals. The arrivals come, and it even the opera was in 2 parts. I don't know if you know this, but if you want to see the opera, or to you can go to the Industry LA website and click on Sweetland. But it also shows, the opera shows how industry moved into California, where you had Asian people working on the railroad, and how the railroad changed the life for Asian people, for African American people. And then, like, to wrap it up into a little box and put that bow on, we actually did the opera in the historic LA park, which is down by Chinatown. I don't know if anybody knows LA, it's right by Chinatown. So that park is indigenous Tongva land. So so we even had, at the beginning, we had Ferdinand, the band of Angelinos and the Tongvas. We had their leaders come down and do a blessing before we ever started building anything. They blessed everything, and then they came on the opening night, and did a blessing too before we all opened, and then did a blessing for the cast and everything. So, even you think about how many people that you want to reach, or how many people you want to affect. I'm sure people in the cast never had people, bless them like this before it was open. The people that were building the sets, they probably never saw the land being blessed by, indigenous people before they started, before they started building. So it was just, it was amazing. Like, the opening night, the opera split into 2 parts. So you can go see the native part, which is Feast, or you can go see the other part, which is called Train. So everybody has a meeting place that they're in the beginning, and it has a lot of seats and everything. And then, like, the first part of the opera is sung. And then, depending on which bracelet you have, which one you wanted to see, then you split and go into 2 different areas. But at the very end, everybody comes back to that place where you started. So it was great. I gave up my seat a couple of times to people, because we had people that were lined up, out just waiting to, try to get an extra ticket. I mean, our ticket sales were amazing. And We had people from like studios coming, we had people from Disney coming. I mean, just because the experience was an interactive opera, most of the time you're sitting in an opera and people are singing for 2 to 3 hours and you're sitting there. This one, you're interactive, you're going there. When you're in the feast, you're actually at the feast. They have seats where you're sitting at the table and the feast is on the table, or you can sit, behind. On train, you're sitting in, and the set moves around you while you're sitting, so you're sitting in chairs that you can swivel and see everything and take it in. So it's really kind of uh, amazing as an interactive opera. It was the first interactive opera that I've been to.
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible. And it's like you're really indigenizing that space that is so historically white. And so,
Exactly.
I mean, and you're doing it in a way that's not just with the storyline or with the cast, but just the way that it's organized is just much more, it's just a fuller picture of
It's a
what opera can look like. And I feel like that is a lot of what your work is about generally, about just like representation and bringing Indigenous people into spaces that they don't normally occupy given the colonial structure of our society.
Yes.
So yeah, so I feel like that's really incredible. And on that note, I know you've recently worked with a project for Ralph Lauren on a campaign with your son and your dad. So can you talk about that
Sure.
experience?
Well, back in my history, I worked for Ralph Lauren for 9 years, right shortly after school. Not so, I guess, in between school and getting into the film industry. So Ralph Lauren, we were in as a family last year in the holiday campaign. So it was Philip, Pishan, Wakia's baby, and myself. And this year they were looking at us again because Philip models for them. He lives in New York, and they were looking at the family, but because of COVID, they wanted to shoot wherever you lived rather than fly us to a location like they did last year. And so I got to submit more people because Wakia wouldn't be able to be submitted because she's in Canada, and Canada had closed the borders. And so I submitted like Kyra Hendren, who's my little goddaughter. I submitted Rylan, who is Pishan's boyfriend, Rylan Kabodi from Interstate. So I submitted, a lot of us as family and extended family. And then they picked Philip, myself, and then my father. So you had 3 generations of Myers. And my dad is a lifelong rancher, and he lives on a ranch in Oklahoma. So all of us ride horses, and they had us on horseback. But when we were starting to plan the production, I got a call from Devin, who is like over the Ralph Lauren, all of their video and campaign production. And she said, "You're a producer, right?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Would you be able to produce this for us in Santa Fe? Because none of the team would be able to fly and come out." And I was like, "Absolutely," because I would rather produce it than be in it. So, but she kept me in it, and then I did get to produce it, and we just had a quick one-day shoot. It was very COVID safe. They sent us all of their things that they were using in New York for COVID safety and all of their guidelines and their rules. So I had all of that everybody went by, and we had 9 people. So over half the people that were on the shoot were native filmmakers and people that worked in film. So that was great for me to see that, and great for them to see that. And it was also like a first for Ralph Lauren to have a native producer work on the campaign.
Absolutely. And that just fits so well into the rest of your work. And so I guess given all of these different experiences that you've had in all of these different facets of Native art, where do you see the field going? What do you think is the future of Native art?
Well, I think that a lot of people, the future of Native art is probably going to more of a digital platform. I think that, everybody has really had to think outside of their box, the native art box that they've created for themselves. They've really had to step away and figure out how to, represent themselves on a digital platform, whether it's a website, whether it's a online market, digital market, virtual market. So everybody's kind of had to get out of that space. You're able to talk to your customers when you came to your booth. No, you've got to be Now you're talking to your customer in front of your computer or in front of your phone, and making a video of yourself. And so
Mhm.
I think um, I think it's really it's like a step in adaptability. And I think for Native artists, just like myself, many of us are multidisciplinary. We can cross over into different things. So I think that's really important because everybody has to adapt in order to, make your art career and still be able to thrive.
Yeah.
Then you've got to like kind of, be a little more adaptable.
And native art has always been super adaptable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it's also what I like about it is because Native fine art is always somewhat influenced by what's around us. A long time ago, if you look at artifactual pieces, they were influenced by the trees or by the land or the colors, um, just like, ledger art or things that were done on buckskin. But nowadays, I'm so kind of excited to see what's going to come out in sculpture, what's going to come out in traditional art, because there's been this huge shift in everyone's world, not just Native artists, but in the world in general. So it's
Mhm.
going to be kind of interesting to see how that influence pops up, whether it's in silversmithing, jewelry, or, like I said, sculpture, paintings.
Mhm.
What's it going to be? And for me, that's kind of exciting.
Absolutely. And we're in the center of it too in Santa Fe.
Oh,
It'll be
absolutely.
really interesting to see how everybody spent their time in quarantine and what comes out of it, what creative work comes out of it.
Oh, yes.
Um, yeah. So, is there anything else you wanted to talk to MIAC audiences about?
Uh, I just want everybody to stay healthy, to be careful, and keep keep up with your native artists that you collect, and because we just all have to inspire each other right now. As a native person, this is the way that I kind of grew up. We didn't have all of this, and so it's kind of like a throwback for me, and
Yeah.
it's kind of nice for my children to see this. So it's been great for me creatively. I feel like I've been able to really do a lot of things creatively,
Great.
be inspired.
Yeah. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. And thanks for watching. Okay. Bye.
Bye.